A man named Eric is on a walk with his dog Nova. While on the walk, Eric loses Nova after she pulls the leash from his hand in pursuit of a rabbit that
This kind of sounds like hate.
happens to jump out of a bush as they pass by it. Eric chases after Nova, but this only inspires her to run faster until she completely eludes Eric's vision, continuing on her pursuit of the rabbit that has, by now, hidden somewhere in the other direction. After a great deal of time passes, it becomes clear that Nova has outrun her sense of orientation and is now lost. Eric spends the rest of the day and the days following searching for Nova. He notifies neighbors, enlists friends and family to help, puts up signs, and so on. A week goes by. Nova is still missing. Eric is devastated beyond comprehension. He thinks about how horribly unlucky it was that the rabbit jumped out at just the wrong time and that his hand position was just in the wrong place to allow Nova to pull the leash from it. About another week later, a woman shows up at Eric's front door. She has Nova. After Nova and Eric reconnect in a chaotic, heartwarming display of affection, Eric thanks the woman. She introduces herself and tells Eric her name is Vanessa. She's beautiful, and about Eric's same age. Eric and Vanessa talk for a little while and seem to hit it off. In the following weeks, they hang out several times, and things go so well, they soon begin dating. Eric finds her to be absolutely gorgeous, kind, funny, smart, spontaneous, all the right buzzwords for a perfect romantic partner in a story. Soon, Eric and Vanessa fall in love. The
Yay.
relationship is everything one could reasonably hope a relationship to be. Eric thinks about how lucky it was that Vanessa was the person who happened to be in the right place at the right time to find and return Nova.
Yeah.
A couple months go by. Eric is driving on his
Butterfly
way to
effect.
pick up Vanessa. While driving through an intersection, Eric is T-boned at full speed by a driver who distractedly runs a red light coming from the perpendicular side street. Eric is knocked unconscious as he and his car are sent in a thrashing 1080-degree spin. An hour or so later, Eric finds himself in a hospital. A doctor informs Eric of what has happened and explains that he has suffered a severe head injury and that they will need to run some immediate tests as well as a brain scan to determine the severity and if there's any chance of permanent brain damage or internal bleeding. As his consciousness begins to more clearly return to him, Eric thinks about how unlucky he was to have been going to get Vanessa in the exact direction at that exact time. He's furious at the possibility that his life could be ruined by this one random happenstance. Eric is held overnight at the hospital. The next day, the doctor comes into Eric's room. "Eric, how we doing?" the doctor asks. "Fine, a little fuzzy, I guess," Eric replies. "Yeah, I would certainly imagine. You took quite the smack," the doctor says. "Yeah," Eric responds. "So, I've reviewed the CT scan, and I have some bad news, and I also have some good news." Confused, Eric says,
All right,
"Okay,
tell me the good news."
I guess I'll take the bad news first." "Well,
Yeah, whatever,
technically they're
Eric.
sort of the same piece of news," says the doctor.
What the
"What do you
fuck's
mean?"
the difference?
Eric
Just tell me the
asks with
fucking
an
news, you
escalating
idiot.
level of concern and confusion. "The bad news is, we found what appears to be a glioma in your brain." The doctor pauses for a moment and Eric looks at him, unaware of what this means. "It's a tumor," the doctor goes on to say. "The good news, though, is we found what appears to be a glioma in your brain."
Right, so they
"What
caught
do
it
you
in
mean?
time.
How's that good news?" Eric asks. "This tumor has nothing to do with your accident. You actually got out of the accident relatively unharmed. But because of your accident, we ran the brain scan. Because of the brain scan, we found the tumor. Normally, we only catch
Right.
a tumor like this after someone realizes something's wrong,
Yep.
when they start to feel the symptoms, which is almost always too late. Because we found the tumor right now, though, we caught it while it's still benign before it became malignant and grew
Right.
into any other areas of your brain, which in almost all cases becomes fatal.
Right.
Since it's still in the stage,
So the accident was a good thing. Butterfly effect again.
though, we should be able to remove it almost entirely without any issue. Eric, in a weird way, this car accident basically saved your life.
Right, yeah.
So I guess, sort of good news disguised as bad news," the doctor concludes. Eric starts to feel a weird, visceral, tingling sensation and becomes slightly disoriented. Maybe it's the head injury, maybe it's the emotion
Well,
of the situation,
Go talk to
maybe it's the
Vanessa,
fact
man. You'll
that
be
the
okay.
doctor just essentially said the same thing twice, but Eric experienced two totally different mental responses. Maybe it's everything. Regardless,
Peace.
Eric looks around at the room. He thinks about how lucky he was to have been going to get Vanessa in the exact direction at that exact time. He thinks about how lucky he was to have gotten in the car accident. He thinks about how weird it is to think this. For something so bad to be so good, and for something so good to be so bad. In this moment, Eric realizes how little he knows about what anything actually is.
Yep.
That he has never and can never know what exists on the other side of anything that happens to him or because of him, no matter
Hey,
how
little
good
butterfly.
or bad, lucky or unlucky any of it might seem. Eric feels a strange, paradoxical sense of helplessness and liberation. About a week later, Eric undergoes brain surgery to remove the tumor. The surgery is successful. Eric is mostly as good as new, with exception to a scar running down the side of his scalp. Several days later, after being released from the hospital, Eric is at home with Vanessa, recovering. To get some fresh air, he takes Nova out for a walk.
Nova. Yeah, that's a really good little essay too. I think again it kind of goes with the whole fear anxiety thing. It's like when depending on who the person is, and religious, or if you believe in energy or the universe and fate and things like that, it's like personally I've had things happen in my life where it's like I can pinpoint things specifically back to a certain event, and it's like if I didn't do that, then this wouldn't have happened, and then this wouldn't have happened, and blah, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Like my current job, um, and you start realizing that like your choices that you make really just matter on what you feel is right in that moment, as long as you are not hurting anybody. I think, and obviously, which is the biggest thing, don't be hurting anybody, don't hurt yourself, and just do what you think is correct. Then you can kind of lose that fear and the worry, of like what is going to happen. You just do the best you can at the time that you can, help others if you can, whatnot, you know, and eventually you'll get to a decent place, as long as you work hard, and you can't just sit back and expect life to happen to you. You have to like work at it, you know. Um, but all these, beautiful little accidents happen all the time. It's the some people would call them miracles, you know, um, which is really really cool. Yeah, I think, but the Butterfly Effect is a great movie with Ashton Kutcher that touches on that. Um, what's it called? Uh, it's a little dark, but it definitely plays into that same idea of like every action causes a different reaction. Um, what's it called? Damn it. Um,
In what ways?
yeah, it makes you think. I love videos like that. I love getting a little bit more introspective and having those conversations of especially up with people, and understanding, you know, how you got to where you were, where you're at, right? Because everybody is different. Everybody has, different goals and dreams, aspirations, wants, and all that stuff in life. Some people want a family, some people don't, and it's interesting to kind of just see where people are at in their lives and how did they get there. What was the turning point in your life that got you to where you are now? And if you did something else, would you be someplace else? Um, I've gotten a ton of acting gigs that if I didn't do one thing, if I didn't go to the bathroom at this time, if I wouldn't have met this person. Literally, if I didn't go to the bathroom at one point, I would not have been called out by a friend who was out there, who introduced me to this person, who introduced me to this person, and then hired me, and blah blah blah. I almost didn't go to school that day. I was almost gonna just stay home from college, but something told me just go to class. Went to class, went to bathroom, and it's just like you don't think about that in the moment, but like, hindsight's 2020. I that was 2017. I can look back at that and be like, shit, like that was the start of something beautiful. But again, going back to fear and anxiety, if there was the fear of going to college that day, or the anxiety of like, oh, I have to go to school and I gotta get dressed and blah blah blah, if you have that anxiety and you let it hold you back, you're never gonna get those opportunities. You're gonna the miracles that are out there for you, right? Like the universe wants to give you what you want, but you have to go out and go get it. You can't just stay home and stay in bed. That doesn't mean you can't stay in bed some days. That's totally fine. But the more you're, oh, Is it fixed? Can you hear me okay? Water. Test, 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 test. Testing, is this better? Yeah, it's alright, it's all good. It happened. It's still a little rough. Uh-oh. I wonder what that is. I wonder if it's this. Sucks. It happened a couple or last night as well. Someone could only hear me out of the left side, or it sounded a little bit wonky. Testing, 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 testing. Still the same. I don't know if I can figure out the. Test, 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 test. Yeah, see on this one I can see that it's like the levels right over here. Something's going on with this. Test, test, testing. Strange static. Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. Because I've heard it in other videos. I think Ryan said that. Ryan said he had that as well in another video. Test, 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 test. Now you're only in my left ear. Can you hear me? Is this a little bit better? We're back. We're back. Testing, testing, testing. But is it like still watery or whatever? Static remains. Let me try something. I'm gonna try to switch something really quick. I'm gonna try it. Is this any better? Yeah, a little bit better. Okay. Ah, man, I hope I don't have to get another fucking headset. Because usually I used to use my Scarlett and like an Audio Technica or whatever microphone, but it's just so much extra fucking work. But yeah, like I was saying, it's just you can't just sit back and expect things to happen to you. And I've done that plenty of times. Where I've gone sometimes a couple months of just like depression of just staying home because there's just no motivation or inspiration or anything like that. But it's like you have to find that inspiration somehow if you want to do things. If you have desires. And it's hard. That's why I think people should have empathy with people that have depression or anxiety or any sort of situation. you know, because it's like it's millions, billions of people probably experience that, or not probably do experience that, you know. It's just a matter of finding out how can you fix it, you know, what can you do to fix it, whether it's some people it is medication, some people their medication is weed, some people it's yoga, some people it's a certain diet. A lot of times it is a vitamin, you know, sometimes it's just a chemical imbalance, and you just kind of have to figure out what it is that you need, you know. You're not getting enough of something. um, it could be exercise, it could be you're not getting enough physical attention, or social attention, you know, from friends, or family, or anything like that. It's a multitude of things, but you have to figure it out. You can't just sit back and just expect it to be fixed. You have to actively try to fix it, you know. um, but going back to the video of just like understanding, you know, situations, like even on Twitch, you know, it's crazy, like when you meet somebody on Twitch that could introduce you to somebody else, you know, or vice versa. You know, you play one game one day that you didn't think was going to pop off. It ends up sending you off into this whole nother direction, you know, of popularity, or meeting a friend. It could be of finding someone that you fall in love with, you know. And then you have kids. You look at Miscellany and Tina, you know, and it's like there's so much beauty in just putting yourself out there, but you have to put yourself out there. So even just driving, you know, driving in the car, going to go see Vanessa, like in the story, you know, he put himself out there into that position, you know, and the universe is gonna be like, hey, I see you, and there's other stuff happening that you don't see, so we're going to kind of figure out how can we help you out. But yeah, you finally got shit, finally working shit out. That's good. Time. Right. Yeah. And sometimes it is time. You know, it's what's one of the crazy things is people don't realize is, you know, as you get older, your chemistry changes. So sometimes, you know, people get into their 40s or 50s who have never had a fear of flying, but then something just clicks, and then they're afraid of something, you know, or they're not afraid of something. You know, so we're always changing and evolving, you know, and it's just sometimes things work, sometimes things don't, you know. Um, I do believe personally, like, you know, things like depression, and anxiety can definitely be, you can get rid of that if you figure out how to do it. You know, it's not easy. It's very, very difficult. It takes time, you know, and there's ways of getting to it quicker than others. Um, but it is definitely possible. But again, it's like, how bad do you want to get rid of it? How bad do you want to heal? You know, a lot of times for us, myself included, it happens with a bad breakup or relationship issues, you know, that cause depression, or people's charisma goes down the drain. You know, people feel worthless, you know, and you have to build yourself back up again. And it's tough, but it's like, if you didn't go through that hard part, you know, as they say, like rock bottom, to then start slowly build back up, you know, then it's like you don't you it's hard to appreciate life if you've never experienced that rock bottom, you know, whatever it is, you know. But it's like, how do you get back up? You know, you fall down 7 times, get back up 8, that whole thing. But new cells, yeah, right. Yeah, but yeah, it's wild, man. Those are good videos, dude. Definitely love watching those. It's definitely one of those things that, like, you can kind of talk about that for forever, you know. And then everyone has a different situation. Again, I love hearing about how people do something, and it causes a ripple effect, you know, careers, relationships, whatever. Speaking of relationships, let's check this